Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for another CTC software webinar. Today we're going to be doing part 2 in a series highlighting how our tools can help with site design. And today we're going to be doing some preliminary grading. My name is Tony Crick. I'm the Civil Products Manager here at CTC Software. This webinar will be recorded to be viewed later if you would like, and should be up in a few days. And you can always go to our events page to see any of our upcoming webinars. So don't miss another one. So CTC CIM Project Suite is what we're going to be talking about today. And as we go along here, if you have any questions, please enter them into the question panel. We will attempt to get to them during the broadcast. Otherwise, we will certainly get to them afterwards. So as I said, it's CTC Project Suite. It's a whole suite of tools, and it's intended for the everyday civil 3D user creating design, production drawings, and it will work in the last 4 versions of Civil 3D back to 2020. And keep in mind that Civil 3D 2025 will be released soon, and when that comes out, we will no longer support Civil 3D version 2020. So if you haven't upgraded your Civil 3D yet, I encourage you to do so. So this series of webinars, as I mentioned before, will show some of the ways CTC CIM Project Suites can be used to help save time and make your workflow more efficient and allow for quick drawing data updates when things change. We're going to take a land development site and explore some of the tools CTC offers to help us get those jobs done. So what are the CIM Project Suite of tools? As I said before, it's intended for the everyday user creating design production. We have tools for survey, pipes, grading, corridors. Our general tools include Label Genie, which is a very powerful labeling tool that automates all of our labeling. And we also have Clash Seeker, which helps to identify where interferences, things might happen that could cause problems later on. And we have our Data Wizard, which will help in creating legends, quantity takeoffs, and many other things that you might find useful, along with Sheet Generator to help us generate those sheets when we get to the end of our project. So our tools are set up to automate time-consuming tasks, and it's built into Civil 3D for consistency and familiarity. There's no proprietary files created. Everything you do relies on Civil 3D and all of its styles and settings. So why CTC Project Suite of tools? Well, it'll save time during your design and production process. We can maintain templates for consistency and avoid surprises. We'll show you some of that today. And with that, new team members can pretty much plug and go. It really shortens the learning curve as far as using our tools and for new team members. So with that, let's get into the live demo here and show you some things. Okay, so here's our site. This is what it looks like prior to construction. We have an agricultural field here that is going to be turned into a large development with some single-family housing, some multi-family housing, some retail, the whole gamut of design elements that you would put into a land development project. So let's do a little recap of part one in case you didn't join us. We did existing conditions. So with that, we showed how to take a survey. In this background was just a LiDAR survey, an aerial survey. And then the survey crews went out and shot the adjacent roads here for us to connect to. So I took AutoGrader and I used our AutoGrader tool to incorporate their shots along these roads to create a better surface for when we connect out to here, for example. And over here, we're going to connect. Today, we're going to connect right here. So as I said, you can see this is a large site, approximately 80 acres, that is going up for development. So let me get that aerial off there and let's jump into this. So today we're just going to focus on some preliminary grading for this area right here. That's the first phase of this development. We're going to be putting eventually some single family homes in this area, down in this area. But this is going to be the phase one for this area here. So with that, we created a connection right here with some alignments connecting to the existing over here, the existing neighborhood. And we created some rough road widths alignments. We've got a right of way right here. And then, like I said, some preliminary alignments here. So this is preliminary grading to see how these might go and how we might move forward with the process. So after I created the alignments, I did some vertical alignments here for some connection points. You can see we're going to have quite a bit of cut in this area, quite a bit of fill, quite a bit of cut here, some more fill here. Overall, this general site is going to end up with a large amount of cut. And we're going to kind of want to see where we want to use some of that material. So let's first jump into something that might help here. To get this, as it was an agricultural field right here, to get a stripping volume, if you will, right here, just out of this area to see how much earth we might have, we can use our earthwork processor. So I don't have an existing or a proposed surface yet. That's what we're developing. I opened out my other screen. Okay. So I went ahead and I created an earthwork set. So what we want to do is we want to calculate. We're going to strip off a half a foot of some of that nice black agricultural dirt that we can use for our yards, maybe in some unsuitable areas, but we don't know how much we have. And like I said, we don't have a proposed surface, but that's okay because all we want is the stripping here anyway. So I can compare. It's just going to come off the existing anyway. So if I just say it's existing and existing, I should have mentioned previously in our other part one series, after we created the road in the background here, after we created this and we had a good surface there, I simply created a composite from the existing that we had out there. So that's what this is. It's the composite of the aerial and that over there to give us good connection points. So here's how we can check or see how much stripping, how much topsoil we can have right here. So with that, I just used the right-of-way, which was created. I'm going to close that. So the right-of-way is right out here. The right-of-way was created. In the previous one, we showed the plat. We showed how we did the proposed platting through here, through this area back here, really where it all starts. So we had our boundary plat and we had some of this other plat. We did our labeling. And that ultimately becomes our right-of-way. So that's this line right here. So I'm going to take this line right here, and we're going to create a stripping to see, first of all, how much area is this encompass and what is our quantity going to be. So if I open up Earthwork Processor again, we can see that I already made that layer as the right-of-way. So how do we do this? Well, we give it a name right here. I could, once I make one of these, I could copy it. I could also save it out, which I did for future use. But for this case, you just give it a name right there to define what it is. And then I come in here, and for some of you that haven't seen this tool before, this is one of our common windows right here that we use for just about everything, so a very familiar user interface for it. And since we have multiple right-of-way lines, I picked it with this. I could have done it with this one, but then I would have gotten too many. In fact, let me do that just to show you, and I'll show you where that comes from. So right away it tells me it's going to drop that one, and now it found two right-of-way lines, but that's going to include this one out here, which we don't want. So I'm going to clear that again, and I'm going to grab just the one we want right here. Now this requires us to have a closed polyline in order to do our volume surface. So I say okay right there, and if you haven't seen our tools before, you might notice it took on the name of the layer. Well, where does that come from? It comes from right here. So this is where I would set my path to save it from. And then in my surface creation, I can come right here too. It's going to create a surface, and it's going to create from all of these our settings. So how do we want it displayed? Again, how do we want our earthwork surface displayed and our stripping surface displayed? I'm going to leave them all at no display because I don't really need those today. And we have some other settings in here that we can get at. So we can, when we put our label on, we'll create a label at the same time. I will do that today. And this is everything we're going to get right here. I'm going to remove this subgrade depth because we don't need that. So how would I do that? Right here is where we pick and choose what we want to show. So I'm going to take that one out. We don't need that. We don't really need our proposed in there because we don't have one. I'm going to leave the name. I'm going to just say it's the existing cut fill. I'm going to leave that on to show, and then I want to include the stripping as well. So we'll say okay right here. And then some of our other settings here is just our text, well, how we want that text to show. I'm going to leave it at standard. Anything that's in your drawing, as I mentioned before, can be accessed right here. In fact, let me set it to this L100. So if it's in your drawing, we can get at it. And then the layer it's going to go on, I'm going to leave it at 0. How do we want it orientated? Those types of things. And then we can export it to an Excel table as well with different settings. And then what do we want for our display here? So this is in square feet. It will export or label in square feet. But you might be saying, hey, I don't see that on for your area on the top. I see it's acres. That's controlled in your ambient settings. So I'll show you that in just a second. So with that all set, we say okay. And then we also have up here, if you need help, this will take us to the user manual. You can see helpful videos, which this will be one of in the future. And our support, you can click here for support. If you don't have our tools, if you have our tools, you don't know what version you're on, you can select that right there, and it will take you to the version. You can see what it is right there. If you're not at 24.5, which we currently are, you can go get it and download it right there. Some other things we have in here are all the same except for this suite licensing portion right here, which will tell you what type of license you're using and how to get at that as well. So with that all said, we can go ahead and we can run this. So I'll just click this right here, and we only have one, so I could select run all or however I want to do it, but I'm going to click the run right here. So it's going to just take off the stripping. These columns should populate as 0. Oh, I said I was going to put the label on. I'll click that. If I want to label every region, I would do that. I don't have more than one, so I'm just going to do that one right now. I'm going to tell it to run, and it's going to put a label on there, which we can review later. So it's going to take a little bit. It's a very large site. You can see 43 acres for that. So it's going to look for right now, it's going to look for that proposed surface and then the existing surface, and it's going to compare or take that stripping off of there. And in addition to that, it is going to make a surface for that stripping, which we will be using later as our actual existing ground, because we're going to want to come off of that. The first thing we want to do is remove all of that stripping. So our real existing ground is going to be a ½ foot below the current composite existing ground surface. So you saw right there, it was created. If you saw that, it's creating the surface. Now it's updating the earthwork. Get this nice status bar down here, letting us know what our progress is. So a lot happening in the background here with this tool. So give it just a couple more seconds here. Again, very large site, doing a lot of work. So now it's done, and we get our report right here. So we have 35,000 cubic yards of topsoil to be left on the site. And I mentioned this acres, and we had our report going out in square feet. Let's find that label. Oh, it came in really tiny because it's annotated for my scale. No problem. I'll just scale it up. It's just text, just AutoCAD text. I'll just say 50. So here's our label report for our stripping here. By default, it throws it to the centroid of your area. So we have all of our information right here. And here it came out in our square feet, but it reported in the table as acres. And I said that comes from our ambient settings. As I said, all of our stuff works with and in conjunction with Civil 3D. So if I wanted to see that in my table in square feet, I would just come here and change this. I have it set to acres because it's such a large site. But if I toggle that to square feet right there, and then I open Earthwork Processor back up, we're going to see that now it's going to report in square feet. Did I not get it? It's going to report in square feet. and it should match the number in our table or our label right there. So here's our, now it's square feet, matches that right there. So that's our simple use of preliminary use for earthwork processor. So let's get into this grading right here. As I said, I made these alignments. I made vertical alignments out of them. Keep in mind, this is all preliminary. Just give us an idea where things are going to go, how we can grade for our lots. So pretty simple process. We knew what our roadway width was going to be here. That's this representative here. Back of curb lines off of our center line, which is nothing more than the center of our right-of-way or our plat. And then this is all private up here. So this doesn't have a right-of-way because it's private. Be part of the association. Here's our boundary for that, which I don't have as a right-of-way right now. So how can we do this? How can we make our tools give us an idea of what's happening out there? So AutoGrader, a very powerful tool for this. We don't have to go through and create corridors right away. We don't have to mess with all kinds of that stuff. If we have a typical road, such as this right here, a 2-lane road, urban road with barrier curb on it, we simply just make a stick drawing like we used to do in the old days. So we have a stick drawing of the surface. This will represent the surface. We're going to follow this parent line, which is going to be this center line right here. So it consists of our parent line, and then that's all you need to create all of our other feature lines, break lines, which will happen along here. So as you can see, it's going to follow one parent line and create 10 child feature lines. And they're labeled right there. So we get this nice stick figure of what it looks like. And it's nothing more than just coming out here and starting to build it. So I started with, I dumped in a B618, a barrier 18 curb right here to see what the settings were to make sure I match that when I put them onto here. So let's open that back up. So here's what we have. Here's how we did this. So we have the parent, or the edge of pavement is our first one, edge of pavement right. And you label these however you want. So to keep order of what you see when they're coming in down here, it's very helpful. You also give it a name up here. Oops. 618. Right there, that was a preliminary I had in there. So I'll give it that name right there. And then we have some other things in here. So how did I make these? So I went with my edge of pavement right. We started with a distance at slope. So I know I want to go the distance, and I want to go to the right to do the right side of the road. It's going to be a 16-foot wide through lane at -2% to get to there. Then we start building our curb out. So we went from the edge of pavement to our flow line, to our top face of curb, to our back of curb, and then a boulevard section in here to see how that would grade. Now, we don't know if there's going to be a sidewalk yet, but we can grade that preliminarily to see what's going to happen there. So in addition to that, we have our formatting. So these feature lines are all going to come in on specific layers, the layers that we select right here, and then the style we want it to be, which is critical for our hierarchy when break lines cross. So we have one in here called child. I've created one called child. And there's all these feature lines that are created in Civil 3D, some out of the box, some custom created to choose from. So we pick our style, then we grab our layer, again, coming from any layer that's in our drawing right here. And then what site do we want it to go on? We want it to go on this CTC development. That was left intentionally blank because if you're going to use this template later, as I mentioned, I saved it out, then we don't want it to come with a pre-populated name that won't exist. So I'm just going to set all these to our site. And I just thought I should show you the surfaces that got created for our earthwork processor. Let's go through this first. So one of our newest features in 24.5 was when you create a feature line natively, you can give it a name. Of course, you got to do them one at a time, but you can give them a name. So we added that right here, which is pretty handy. So now when I pull up my feature lines, I can just click on them and see what they are. So they're consistent across this whole thing, left and right. So right here, I'll say OK. Then we have some settings here for the surface. How do we want them to go? So I want these to be placed before non-auto grader operations, which means if I had another crossing brake line, auto grader feature lines will take over. And I don't have the surface yet. I'll show you that in a second, but I could set that right here as well. We'll create the surface on the next, or on the front page here. And then how do we want these added to the surface? In this order right here. So I could change that if I wanted to, but this is the order by default that they got created. So we have that. And we have some other supplementing factors, some weeding factors, very typical of how you would do a surface in Civil 3D natively. So I'm going to put a boundary on there. I want a boundary for this one because we're doing it preliminary stuff. And I think I have a layer for it. I don't see one. I thought I had one. So let's just put it on, let's just use current. Let's let it go to current. My working, since we're working anyway, we'll put it on that layer. I'll say OK. I'm going to save and close out of here. And in order for it to make a surface as we're going along here, we need to create the surface. Now we could have come over and done that before. Let me close this to get back to the earthwork processor to show you how that came in. So in our surfaces now, here's our development site stripping that I talked about before. And we have our surfaces created right here, which this site stripping surface will eventually become our finished ground surface, taking the place of the composite when we get there. So that's where that came from. And you could certainly create right here the surface that way. But why not just do it in the tool and we don't have to leave the tool to do that? We'll see that in a second. Whoops, I hit earthwork processor, not auto grader. Bad aim. Okay. So let's create the surface. It's the same basic surface creation. And I'm going to give it a name right here. We would do this just like we do. I'm going to call it CTC. Let's call it phase 1. Oops. Development phase 1. And I know this is block 5. of phase 1. And then our style, how do we want it to come in? I'm going to make it 1 and 5. Then the render material, how we wanted that to be. We want it to be a tin surface. And I'm just going to tell it to create. And now that I've done that, it'll be available in this selection right here. So there it is right there. CTC development phase 1. So it's going to write to that surface. I'm going to take that curb out of there because we don't need that right now. And where I said mentioned the templates where they're stored and how do we get at them. You set the path right here. We have our precisions, how we want those to come. And then we set our defaults, how we want those to be created. Probably should have had that on child before. And then the layering and the site. So by default, I can put that on the site where it would come up in the format. Then the surface boundary layer, I have that at 0. I told it to go on the current. I'm going to put it up there to current as well. And then some of our daylighting and how that works. That doesn't really come into play right now, but that's just some of our other settings. So then with that, we have the same menus here. Pull down the help, everything just like I showed you in Earthwork Processor. And then we would create the new one here. We would add right there to create. We have parallel, perpendicular, and then template insertion. Today we're going to be doing strictly parallel to pre-grade those lot areas. Then delete it, edit, copy. You saw the surface creation. Then if we wanted to save it, we would click this one. If we had one out there, we would load. We'll show that in a second too. But with that, we can go ahead and we can run it. Oh, I should mention also, we're going to run these the full length of that feature line, full feature line, which now comes from there to there. As a matter of fact, let me change that. I'll show you how that works. We'll change that so that it only goes from the end of where we're going to stub out here to the other end. So how do we do that? We just simply come here and we pick right on the screen. If you knew the station, you could do that too. Nice even station right there. We'll grab that to 50 to, looks like we'll go to this end right here, whatever that is. I'm going to round that up to 1150. Okay, to save and close. So now if I run it, when I run it, we're going to get, it's going to put all of our break lines in here, and that's going to begin to create a surface as well. So let me hit run. And this will take just a couple seconds for it to find the center line and then start to create our feature lines. And with that, I see a question came in. And the question is, you said by default the table goes to the center of the drawing. What are some other options for table location? Is there a way to set that default location instead of being centralized? There is not. However, if you do move it like I did there, the next time it comes in, it will land in the same spot. My table style or my text style wasn't the proper one for coming out in paper space, so it came tiny like that. But again, it's just an AutoCAD entity. So we can do whatever we want with it. So now this is processing. You see it created. It's creating our child feature lines. And there, it put them all onto our surface and created our surface, which at first glance looks pretty good. Got some sloping here. It should match because I pulled those feature lines, I should have mentioned that. I pulled the feature line off of the alignment. So it's going to follow the grades that we have here. So it's a neighborhood. We want it to be fairly flat, and we want our connection points there. So all I did there was I just came in here and I used Civil 3D Tools, and I created the feature line from alignment like that, and I grabbed the alignment and went through the process of setting that up right there. So it's an auto feature line from an alignment. Any feature line that you create, you can get at. So now we see these lines came in, and I said that one of our newest tools was the naming format. So if I click on here, oh, for some reason, did I miss that? Well, it should populate right there, but I gave it the name of that. See if that one came in. Okay, they did before. I must have done something incorrectly. I don't know what it was. But you could certainly give it a name right there as well. So we started grading, and we want to get in here. So eventually, we're going to create some lots for this platted area and this platted area across here. So I already said I know we're going to need 7 lots at 55 feet each, and 6 lots at 55 feet, and then 1 at 51.5 to take over the end of it. That will be in future webinars, how we finish that up with AutoGrade and start to get things looking more finished. So that really didn't take all that long to do that, to get our preliminary stuff. Like I said, no corridors. So we can come through and we can do the same for these 2 roads. So that was the main road here, CTC Parkway. We'll also do this Mills Boulevard and the Mills Lane. So as we do that, to create that, now that I have it, if I didn't have another template for it, it would simply be a matter of just copying it and knowing the widths. So if I did this, all I would have to do is come in here, change my lane width here. But I already made a template for that to save some time. So I'm going to get rid of that. We don't need that. And I'm going to show you, here's how we load one. Like I said, I made this ahead of time. So it's this Mills Drive that we're looking at right now. Whoops, I hit the save. I don't want save, we want open. Open Mills, where did it go? Mills Lane, open that up. And now it comes all pre-populated, except for the surface, of course, which I left blank when I made it originally. Now you might have just a road that you might call a 12 lane or a 12-foot lane or a 16-foot lane in the case of the main road. So now all I have to do is come in. Oh, why did I lose my parent line? Oh, there it came back. Let me cancel that. And that populated too, so I must have had to click on it to find it. But to verify right here, it's the CTC, I don't know what it's called, Boulevard. Must have changed the name. Actually, that's the wrong road. So let's grab that. And grab this one, make sure we get the right road. So it's auto feature line, Mills Drive. Yes, okay. And then for this one, we have it's a 1.5 foot gutter, so we have 13-foot lanes, actual lanes, but to the edge of pavement is 11.5 feet. So everything should be ready to go. Let's check our formatting. Everything looks good, ready to go. So I didn't have to redo any of that. Say okay out of here. And my surface site, these are coming. I better pick my site. again, because I didn't have that in my template, that I have to redo it. So you can use these for, multiple uses. Let me open that up so we can see them all. So it's just simply a matter of opening them, picking them. Now I could have checked this right here to match the default to auto-populate that, but then I would have lost all my custom layering. So that's why I'm not doing that. So now we're good to go. And I'm going to save and close out of here so I can slide that off to the side. I'm going to close this too for temporary so we can see this as it's happening. Okay. So obviously that needs a little cleanup, but it's preliminary, so we're not really interested. We just want to be out here right now. So you open AutoGrader back up now that we can see it, and I'll just tell it to run it. And like I said, if you created all of these ahead of time, loaded them, you could run them all at once. It's going to take a few minutes to do this. Again, it's doing a lot in the background, creating our brake lines and our surface, editing our surface. And it is 10 child lines we're creating here. So it will take just a second or two. Then two, we get this nice little report telling us when it was last run. So if something changed, if somebody said, hey, Tony, I made a change to that alignment out there, you might want to go remake a feature line out of that and rerun things if the grades changed on it. So that's why this is preliminary and how easily this can be redone. We would know, has it been run since then? No, it hasn't. So I can safely say I need to update it. So you can see it's starting to put our brake lines in. And if I did this right, it's going to match our back of curbs. Would be the only thing you need to know coming in is our total road width for everything to come in. Now it created the surface. So we can see we got some steep grades here. So in that case, we would know we probably want some walkout lots up here for this. And then we could start creating some perpendicular lines, like I said, we will do in a future webinar. Well, let's open AutoGrader back up and let's do this one last road to see how this all comes together. So with that, I've already created, as I said, let's go get that one for the Mills Lane. Mills Lane. Wrong one. Mills Drive. Okay. And come in here, make sure our feature line is correct. And I do think I've got these mixed up. So let me re-pick that one. I did do those backwards, but they're the same. These two are the same. Actually, they're not the same, so I did mess that up. So in that case, here's how easily we can save that. Let me cancel this. And see where that one, here's the another option. So it takes you to the family. So we know I messed that up. I did that in the wrong order. Or did I? Well, let's just let it go. Let me open that up. That's because we're doing preliminary anyway. All it affects is the width of the road, which I saw I didn't get. So let's clear that. Grab this one. change my mind on that. Let's get this right. The drive. So it's this setting here, 14-foot lanes. Grab the wrong feature line. Or did I? Oh, cancel out of there. Let's just run it. Let's do the other one. Come in here, Mills Lane. Now I'm mixed up with these Mills names. So I know I want this one for that. Okay. Save and close. Better check my formatting for that one, since I did that wrong. Mills Lane, Mills Drive. Save and close. Let me run. I think I'm gonna lose. Let's see. This is what makes AutoGrader so versatile, is you just push the button and let it re-go. So I know that I can see right here. I did do that backwards. That I believe is drive. Should have put that label up there where I could see it better. But again, like I said, it's not affecting anything but the road width. Everything is the same. So we'll give it a couple seconds here to do its thing. I should have zoomed out so we could see the lines being created and the surface. Eventually, we'll make this finished, all of this the finished ground surface, and then create our total finished ground when we get there. Probably should have done all of them. It would have been a little more wait time, but it would have taken care of all of them at once. After this is done, we'll rerun this. We'll take the minute or so. We've got a little bit of time left here to redo that before we get a look at what our preliminary grading is. And the whole purpose of this is just to see what type of lots we want to put in these development areas. For our, let me close and zoom out, for our driveways too. So there we did that one right. Let me fix that other one. Bear with me, it will take another minute or two, but again, we still have the same steep grades right there. As you can see from the background contours there, we have some steep grades up here. So this is drive, and looks like I did that right. 14. Let me clear it and grab this again. So say okay. And then let's run it. I'll save and close and then hit the run again. And this will take a minute or two, again, for this to grab all these and put all these surfaces together. Oh, I see. I didn't add it to the surface. Gosh darn it. As we move along here in the series, I will clean that up afterwards, after the webinar today. And the series is going to also include the storm and sanitary and water main connections in here as well. So there it's putting in the right lines. I see that they are hitting in the right place, the right widths. I apologize for mixing those two up. And there we go. So the brake lines are in there, close. And I wanted to show you this too. In the surfaces here, it puts the collections, it already adds them to our definitions of our brake lines. So here's our brake line definitions for those. Obviously, I didn't get that area, but when we join for the next one, that will be corrected. So that's all I had to show you, getting up against the time. I'm going to get this, I won't. I was going to say I was going to run it while we wrap up here, but I will take care of that for the next webinar. So like I said, it's part of our CTC CIM Project Suite of tools, version 24.5. Currently, we also have our Manager Suite of tools, which is more for CAD managers or those supporting a Civil 3D team and creating your templates. So if you don't have it and you would like to get it, contact your local reseller. If they don't offer it, contact us here directly at CTC Software. We'd be glad to help you out. And as always, if you have any ideas or need help, contact us here at support. All of our tools are built with you in mind, for you, by suggestions from you. So we really appreciate your input, and we try to accommodate any wishes you might have out there. So with that, thank you for joining us today for a CTC webinar.